Observing children objectively and recording what we see and hear is a skill that we want to develop or polish in this course. Over the semester, we will be doing 3 detailed observations related to the domains of development that we're studying. So we will do one related to physical development, one related to cognitive development, and a final one related to social emotional development. This is an important skill to have for any child-related career, whether it's some type of medical career, counseling, social work, or education. But if you're pursuing a career in early childhood education, birth to around age 8, this will be a skill that you will need on a nearly daily basis. Young children very often cannot tell us what we need to know, but if we are skilled observers, children can communicate very effectively through what they say and do while we are observing them. As we learned earlier in this course, there are several ways we can effectively study children, ranging from observations and anecdotal records to case studies to experimental research using cross-sectional or longitudinal methods. The most commonly used would be anecdotal observation. These written records allow us to do a variety of things. Observations can help us to determine how a child is developing related to others of his or her stage in development. It can help us to identify interests and skills and help us to support growth and development. I like to think of anecdotal records as stories that describe meaningful behaviors and include the verbal responses of the child and others they're interacting with. For our course, we will be using video clips to practice this skill. Most typically in real life, these observations would be done live, with the observer writing down what they see and hear as it is happening. Usually, using video allows us to develop and practice this skill with the benefit of instant replay, or our ability to view the video clip as many times as we need to capture the action. Just remember, in real life, this will rarely be the case. All anecdotal records should start with a description of the setting, so where this is happening. We also record the date, the time of day, the name, and the age of the child, usually in years and months. For example, Erica is 4 years and 3 months old. We describe the child's behavior in terms of what we see and hear only. We do not describe what we think of the behaviors. We want to include all the details of the child's actions and comments, along with the responses of others. To the extent possible, we want to write down the exact words of conversations. Most observations will have a beginning, a middle, and an end. This helps greatly if you need to share your observations with others. They need to be able to picture what is going on based only on your description. Here is an excellent example of a well-written anecdotal observation. You'll notice in the heading we have the time, the day, where it's happening, and the description and name of the child. I would encourage you to pause the video and read through the details of this observation of Liam playing with blocks. There are several additional things to remember when doing observations, especially when these observations happen in person. Whatever we are observing needs to be kept confidential, only to be shared with selected other professionals on a need-to-know basis. For example, a number of years ago, I had a little boy in my preschool class who was very aggressive. Jacob was larger than the other children, although not older, and he routinely kicked, hit, and shoved others. I had tried pretty much everything in my teacher toolbox of strategies for dealing with him, but nothing much was working. Parents of 2 other children had begun to contact me, concerned that their children were afraid of Jacob sometimes, so I knew I needed to take additional steps. The classroom aide and I had already been recording frequent anecdotes about Jacob's behavior, so we contacted the area educational child behavior specialist to come out and observe. We have shared our observations with the specialist, and he shared his with us. We were then able to develop a plan for supporting Jacob as he learned better ways to express himself and to manage his behavior. But imagine the issues that could have arisen if we had just been venting and talking out in public about our frustrations with Jacob. It would have been viewed as very unprofessional, and there would always be a danger that our casual comments, however entertaining they may have been, would reach his family members, who definitely would not see the humor in these things being shared publicly. Another important thing to remember is that we are writing an objective analysis and not adding in our conclusions or diagnoses. What we write should be pretty much what we could imagine that a video transcription would include, no more and no less. This is not the place to add in that we think the child is smart or autistic or angry. We describe the actions and the words that might make us think those things. So instead of saying the child is angry, I might describe how she stamped her foot on the floor and said, "Stop touching me," in a loud voice. Finally, we need to work very diligently not to include any bias in the words we choose to use. This is similar to tone when we're speaking, but we want to work to prevent our knowledges and experiences from coloring what we're describing. Consider the difference between saying that a toy is dropped or a toy is thrown down, or the difference between saying that a child is playing and has mud on his hands and saying that he is dirty, or the difference between a child speaking with a loud voice or yelling or whining. Working for clear language that describes only what you see or hear is an important piece of this learning process. Our 3 detailed observation assignments will each begin with writing up an anecdotal observation of a specific video clip. Then the assignment continues on to include 3 additional sections. These include a skill building section where you will identify at least 2 specific domain-related skills that you see the child is learning. For example, for our observation that is focused on physical development, our skill building section would focus on physical development. This is followed by a subjective summary section where you share your professional opinion about what you observed. This is where you are allowed to insert some opinions or speculate on what might be happening. In our earlier example of the child stamping and throwing a toy, we might speculate that she is angry or that she is frustrated and then share why we think that. We still need to stay away from labeling and diagnosing, but a suggestion that you might want to discuss a particular situation with a professional is okay. The final section is suggestions for future learning. Here, you are to make at least one suggestion for the child to expand on what he or she is learning. These suggestions for future learning need to be directed toward the domain of development that the observation is focused on. So suggestions for physical development would be made for the physical development observation. There are resources in the guidelines module for skill assignments that can help you with this, including an excerpted section from the creative curriculum about play. Be aware that in my experience and in the experience of others who teach this skill, some students seem to pick this up very easily, and others struggle more to set aside their knowledge and experiences to be able to write excellent anecdotal observations. I really believe this may be related to the unique ways that our brains work. Those of us who can easily compartmentalize our thoughts are often able to master this skill more easily than those of us who are easily able to see connections between what we are seeing and what we have learned and what experiences have taught us. Be patient with yourself, take the feedback you receive to heart, and set your goal to improving with each of these observation assignments through the semester. This video, along with the written guidelines and assignment, should answer most of your questions. If you have additional questions that these documents don't answer, post them in the Raise Your Hand module or send an email.